All right, we are on live on YouTube, so we are ready to start now.
Okay. It is 9 a.m. and I would like to call to order the meeting of the Transportation Committee of Thursday, November 17th, 2022. Before we begin, please note this meeting is live streamed on YouTube and recorded. Members of the public are encouraged to watch and listen to the meeting online or by dialing into 415-569-6446, 415-569-6446 for the audio of this meeting. If you would like to provide public comment at today's meeting, and if you haven't done so already, please call again 415-569-6446 and let the facilitator know what items you would like to speak on today. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'll start with Director Maston.
Here.
Director Rabbit.
Here.
Director Rodoni.
Present.
Director Snyder.
Here.
Director Thier.
I'm present, but our internet connection is down, so I'm connecting through the cell phone.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. Vice Chair Hill.
Here.
Chair Arnold is absent. President Theriault.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum, but you also are a committee of the whole. On the line, you also have directors Cochran, Garbarino, and Parr. I'll confirm staff really quickly. Dennis.
Here.
Thank you. Joe Wire is not with us today. Ava Barr-Burbish.
Present.
Right. Kim Enolius.
Morning.
Thank you. Dave Rivera.
Good morning, present.
Mona Babauta.
Present.
Thank you. And Jim Swindler is not here today. Kelly Hopper.
Good morning.
Good morning. And that confirms staff on the line. But we also have a number of presenters today, so we will also have them introduce themselves when their item comes up.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to remind everyone to mute their microphones until after the staff's presentation and remember to unmute when we open up for the director's discussion. If we have directors calling in by phone, please use your mute button or *6 to unmute yourself. After staff's presentation, we will be asking for any questions and or comments on the item. Click on the raise hand function if you have a question or press *9 if joining by phone. If there are any questions, the secretary or I will call on you accordingly. If we miss your raised hand, please speak up and I will defer to the secretary. Okay. After our discussion, we will ask for public comment before moving on. Please follow along by referring to the page numbers located at the bottom right-hand corner of the meeting packet. Madam Secretary, please introduce the first item.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hill. We're going to start with agenda item number 3, and that's the informational report regarding the district's advisory committees. And that report is located on pages 3 to 18 of your staff report, staff packet, that is. And staff is available to answer any questions directors may have. I'm not seeing any hands up. If there's any questions on item number 3.
Hi there, hang on with me one sec.
Okay. I guess we'll move on then to see if there's any speakers from the public. I don't believe there's any. Oh, hang on one second. We do. We have a speaker. We have David Pilpel who wants to speak on items 3 today. So give him a second. Let me ask him to speak. Let's see. All right, David, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Great. Just wanted to say good morning. It was a busy week, 3 out of the 4 advisory committees met this week. Last night, both BPAC and PBAC met at almost the same time. Appreciate the 3 directors who were present. That was helpful. I am working on some thoughts about rules, and my current thinking is that it may be appropriate at some point in the future for the board to adopt rules relative to the advisory committees. Maybe, maybe not, but just thinking about that. Anyway, good work by staff, the committee members, and the 3 directors who attended. Thanks again.
All right, thank you. That concludes public comment for item number 3. Vice Chair Hill, I'll turn it back over to you because we're going to move on to item number 4. That's to authorize execution of a 3rd amendment to contract number 2022 F085 Vivalon ADA shuttle bus services with Vivalon for emergency ADA backup service for the Larkspur Ferry. And that staff report begins on page 19 and continues through page 21. And we have ADA Compliance and Program Manager, John Gaffney here. John?
Good morning, Vice Chair Hill,
go ahead.
members of the committee. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm John Gaffney, ADA Compliance and Program Manager for the district. As Amaret stated, the staff report for this item begins on page 19 of your packet. The action before you today requests approval of a 3rd amendment to contract number 2022 F085 with Vivalon in the amount of $759,000 for emergency ADA backup service for the Larkspur Ferry. If approved by the Transportation Committee, this item will be referred to the Board of Directors at its November 18th, 2022 meeting for the appropriate action. This is an extension of the contract with Vivalon that was last brought before you in May. As you will recall, in July 2021, the district's ferry terminal located in the San Francisco Ferry Building was shut down due to mechanical issues with the movable ramps and gangways that allow access to differently configured Golden Gate Ferry vessels. To remain compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the district has elected to provide emergency backup service for individuals with disabilities who wish to travel between Larkspur and San Francisco. Though provided on a different service mode, this is as close to equivalent service as can be provided for individuals with disabilities wishing to use the Larkspur Ferry until such time as repairs can be conducted. Construction is ongoing and the time frame for completion of these repairs is yet to be determined. Staff is recommending that the Transportation Committee recommends that the board approve the extension to this contract for an additional period of 12 months. The extension would extend the contract through December 31st, 2023, and would constitute an amendment in a not to exceed amount of $759,000. It is important to note that the contract with Vivalon contains a cancellation clause in which either party may cancel the contract with 1 week advance notice. This clause would be implemented should the repairs required be completed prior to the conclusion of this contract period. Thank you all. This concludes my report. At this time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
John, thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions or comments from directors on item number 4?
Yeah, Director Maston. Yes, I have a couple of questions. So how many passengers does the shuttle carry now per trip or day or something?
I don't have exact numbers right now. I could provide those to the district or to the board after this meeting. Ballpark, I would say 3 to 5 passengers a week.
A week, okay. My second question, and I'm sure staff has probably looked at this, but I felt I needed to ask anyway. So there's no sort of temporary exterior lift that could be used while we undergo this repair, rather than spending, in this case, $700,000+ for a shuttle for 5 people a week?
The challenge is the high-speed catamarans are very weight sensitive and they don't lend themselves to the easy retrofit of such a lift that you may see in other facilities. So we have looked at that over the years. For the Spalding vessels, it's less of an issue because the Spaldings, some of them have elevators, but the high-speed catamarans are problematic. We use those in the Larkspur service where they get on the upper level. So to get off in San Francisco, would require that they traverse the stairs, or we'd have to retrofit the boats for a lift, which is problematic with such a weight-sensitive boat.
Well, I was thinking more of something on the outside of the boats, on the pier or berth itself, rather than within the ship.
That was also looked at. It doesn't lend itself to it. It was looked at doing it at either Larkspur or San Francisco, but there's a whole host of challenges operationally with respect to how it would work.
Yeah.
So in order to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, staff believes that this, unfortunately, even though it's quite expensive, is the best course of action.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
We do. We have Director Parr with her hand up and Director Snyder. Director Parr, go ahead.
Thank you. I had to get unmuted. This may be a naive question, but are there alternative forms of certificated or certified transportation? I'm thinking of one of the private, like Uber. Are they certified as far as insurance and as far as capabilities to take those passengers from Larkspur to San Francisco?
Unfortunately, Uber tends to not have availability as far as wheelchair accessible vehicles goes. We looked into the possibility of using taxis. Unfortunately, though San Francisco has accessible cabs, Marin does not. This was the only available alternative that we were able to find.
Thank you.
Director Snyder, go ahead. Director Snyder, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. There's no ability to give folks like a voucher or anything like that. I mean, I guess it would just open it up to more than just those 5 people.
That would not comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Okay.
So in order to comply, we have to provide, comparable service. And so, certainly there's lots of options that would be more cost effective than this, but that one would not comply and would likely lead to litigation against the district.
Well, how long is there a way to do we have a timeline for when the repairs are going to be finished and be able to access the catamarans? Is there any way to expedite that, or?
The repairs are to the facility in San Francisco. The construction is ongoing. Engineering has a contract they did on an emergency basis, and the contractors, working to get it done. There is some additional damage that was discovered once they really dove into it with respect to underneath the facility. So the job has grown in scope a little bit, and there's some supply chain uncertainty with a couple of the components that will ultimately be needed to have the rather Rube Goldberg contraptions that we use for the ramps and gangways to function. But there was damage to the underlying concrete support beams also that's being repaired as part of this project.
Are there any further
Right.
questions?
Do we have a timeline at all, or it's all up to the supply chain? And
You have a timeline. The contract runs through the end of next year just to give us cushion. It could be as early as next spring, or it could, be late summer or beyond, based on the supply chain issues on the rams and some of the other components. But the concrete work and other stuff that Power Engineering is doing, will be done in an expeditious fashion. And so it's really some of the uncertainty associated with the various moving parts that make up these gangways.
thank you.
Are there any further questions? Amrit, do you see any?
I see no other hands raised.
Okay. That concludes the discussion on this item. Before we take our vote, Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on item number 4?
We have no speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you. I will now entertain a motion for item number 4. Come on.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Madam Secretary, please do a roll call vote.
Thank you. We're voting on item number 4, and with the first and second, starting with Director Arnold, who's absent. Director Conroy,
Aye.
Director Garbarino,
Aye.
Director Giudice is absent. Director Grosboll is absent. Director Hernandez is absent. Director Maston. Oh. Director Maston.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Parr.
Aye.
Director Rabbit.
Aye.
Director Rodoni.
Aye.
Director Snyder.
Aye.
Director Stephanie is absent. Director Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill.
Yes.
First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Tirio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 11 ayes.
Okay. Let's see. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5, which is an informational update on Bay Area Regional Transit Coordination. The presentation slides can be found from page 23 to 31 on your packet. And Ron Downing, our Director of Planning, is here to take the presentation.
Good morning, Vice Chair Hill, members of the committee. Ron Downing, your Director of Planning. I'm here today to give you a brief update on the regional transit coordination efforts coming out of the Blue Ribbon Task Force, and to talk about the key elements moving forward from the Transformational Action Plan. The meat of the presentation begins on slide 24 of your packet. And what we're going to focus on is an update since the last information I brought to the committee in February, as far as the next steps with the consultant team that MTC has engaged for really trying to get this sorted out moving forward for coordinating the region's transit network. Amaret, if you could go to the next slide. MTC has engaged a consultant team to evaluate the different options for looking at the region's transit network and how to manage some of the key elements, what the best form would be for that management, and what level of authority would be needed for some of these elements. There will be an evaluation of the benefits, costs, and risks of various alternatives of governance for the region's transit network. Elements moving forward under this umbrella, and ultimately they will be making a recommendation to the MTC Commission for a preferred solution to this issue. There's an advisory group that is receiving the information from the consultants, and they have a limited term from really only the next few months to bring something to the MTC Commission in early 2023. The lower right corner, the business case consultant has to have their final recommendations to MTC in February of 2023. So things are on a pretty fast timeline. Slide 26, please. We are about halfway across the slide under element number 3 as far as what the work completed to date is. They have assessed the current state of the region's transit network, and looking at the 6 functional areas that have come out of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. The Blue Ribbon Task Force initially identified 27 different recommendations in July of 2021. And those have been distilled down to some of the key elements moving forward, where some of the work has already been done. Some of the work will be beginning imminently in early 2023, and just how to position this moving forward for achieving benefits and bringing forward things like the fare coordination, which is moving fairly quickly. Some of the things, the Clipper Bay Pass that was approved by our board just a few months ago is one of those elements. The other elements are looking at uniform transfer credits among the different operators and how to coordinate setting of fares. That authority rests with the different transit boards such as yourselves, but how to make it easier for the customer to transfer between systems and pretty much have an idea of what they expect to pay for a ride. So there's a lot of shifts that could be made in element number 4 on this slide. Really determining what the future state of the region's transit governance of this network. And I say that as governance, it's separate from the governing boards of the different transit agencies. It's a coordinated effort looking forward, looking at operational issues, looking at gaps in the current system where service or fares need to be improved to close those gaps. And ultimately, in item number 5, as I said, in February of 2023, coming up with a recommended framework for coordinating all of these efforts. Next slide, please, Amaret. So the 6 areas out of the original 27 that are being drilled down in the work right now are wayfinding, accessibility, rail network management, fare integration, bus transit priority, and network planning. I'm not going to talk about rail network management because that doesn't affect our agency directly. Wayfinding is something that we have actually been working with MTC for about 12 years. Back in 2010, we worked to develop similar standards of wayfinding and mapping for the major transit centers in the Bay region. If you go to our San Rafael Transit Center, there are map cases that look the same as if you go to El Cerrito del Norte, if you go to the Santa Rosa Transit Mall, if you go all the way down to San Jose, you see the same graphics and informational format so that people traveling throughout the region will know what to look for and have the same look and feel for their transit information. This task will build on that information in terms of perhaps things like bus bay numbering at the different transfer stations, having a similar format. Right now, there is no consistency of that. They're also looking at other elements such as, should there be a branding of the region's transit system, perhaps, a sticker on the vehicles that says Bay Transit or something. Accessibility is one that's going to take a little bit more time to work through. It is not just paratransit in the region, it is all kinds of access to the region's transit system. So that one will come a little bit later. As I said, I'm going to skip over rail network management. Fare integration policy, this one is really in the forefront right now from the work for the Fare Coordination Integration Study that was headed up as a joint project between MTC staff and BART staff for the benefit of the region. And those elements will be rolling out as early as next year for some of the improvements as with regard to regional transfer coordinations. Bus transit priority is a very important one that came out of our discussions. Buses that get stuck in traffic are not really attractive to the customers. And so for those of you that have been into San Francisco and seen the Van Ness Bus Rapid Transit and some of the red transit lanes that are on Mission Street and Geary Boulevard, really expediting those buses through traffic improves the experience for the riders. And we're looking at those for the arterial applications in the region. We're also looking at applications on freeways where buses could be expedited through HOV or express lane improvements, perhaps queue jumps, ramp bypasses, things like that. So that is a very important cornerstone of these 6 elements that will be looked at early on. The other one on the slide, network planning. We need to look at the region's transit network and see where the opportunities are to close gaps, to improve service, to do a better job providing access for equity communities, the whole 9 yards. We haven't really done that yet. And so that's going to be one of the efforts that's leading off in 2023 as well, as to look at the entire network, all of the bus, rail, and ferry services, and see how it all fits together, see what kind of improvements can be made, sometimes low cost elements such as improving transfer connections through scheduling efforts among the different transit systems coordinating, sometimes again closing those gaps, and don't know what the cost of that will be, but that will be coming out of this study. Next slide, Amaret, please. So MTC's consultant has been creating a framework. There's a lot of moving pieces to this diagram that's on this slide today. The mission is obviously very important in terms of kind of an overview to how we're going to move this forward. I went through some of the areas of responsibility. They need to delve into who is accountable ultimately for the 6 elements that were on the previous slide. The operating model will also consider governance and decision rights. Again, there had been some discussion in the past of consolidating some of the authorities from the regional transit boards with regard to things like fare setting. Just putting that out as an example. It hasn't gone very far at this point. And using technology to make the region's transit system better in terms of better real-time information throughout the region. Not all of the transit systems in the Bay region have that capability. And then ultimately going to the bottom of this diagram, the customer benefits. What this is all based on is customer driven to improve the experience for the people that are using transit, to attract more people to use transit, and to really shift from automobile-based travel to using the region's transit system in the best possible way. Next slide, Amaret. So as I said, as we're closing out 2022, the consultants are developing a preferred regional network management framework and identifying the next steps. This information will be presented to the MTC Commission in early 2023 and a final report issued during February of 2023 as to what the recommended framework is for managing the region's transit network. And then finally, slide 30 in your packet. All of this is based on a large amount of coordination among the region's transit staffs in MTC. We have weekly coordination meetings on a whole host of topics, both at the general manager level and at the staff level, on operations, planning and scheduling, financing, and communications. So all of these things are interrelated. Funding is a very important cornerstone of how to make this all work. And conveying the information to the customer is first and foremost. So these 5 elements are going to be very important in information that you will see beginning in early 2023. So it's all moving forward. There's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes, and we think that we're going to have a good product coming out of this in early 2023. Dennis, do you want to add anything here?
No, just that a lot of the transit agencies are seeing a similar presentation at their boards this month as we kind of move collectively together. A lot of coordination has been going on, and there's an interest in the region and somehow, making it permanent. And so there's lots of discussions going on, and your team is actively engaged in this, and you have a lot of staff in different functions, Ron, Dana, Paolo, who attend weekly meetings with their colleagues from other agencies as we coordinate and move forward, coming out of the pandemic, but also beyond that, to do what's best for all of our customers.
Happy to answer any questions you all might have on this.
Ron, thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions or comments?
I see 2 hands raised. Let's start with Director Rabbit.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Dennis for participating. And Ron, thank you for the presentation. This is MTC, and this really came out of the Blue Ribbon Transit Recovery Task Force, which was really looking at, now that we're going through or had gone through, moving through the pandemic, Dennis, what do we have? 27 different transit agencies within the Bay Area. And truth be told, I think there's always been a thought that there are a few that probably should not exist or should be combined with others. And how do you actually make the most efficient system possible? I'm all for collaboration and coordination. I think those are the kind of the low-hanging fruit. And I think and applaud Dennis for also recognizing that. What the end product will be, I really I'm not sure beyond that. And I think that's where it becomes a little bit of an uphill battle. I think there are some who would like to see one system throughout the Bay Area, whatever it's called. I don't see that happening personally. I think there are too many obstacles in the way, including all the different labor agreements and the jurisdictions and the history behind it, even the way the bridge is set up. But I do think that, participating down this line to make sure that, for the transit dependent rider, really, and that's who we're talking about, that they can get on a bus if they have to go from, Cloverdale to San Jose and not worry about understanding which system they're on, but they can make that a little more quote unquote seamless. It's been an interesting discussion through this all, and there are times where I'm thinking we're going a little too far. There are other times where I think we need to be a little aspirational, but I do think that the coordination, the cooperation, some of those low-hanging fruit items are really things that we should go for. So again, I just want to thank Dennis for his leadership in this throughout the process.
Thank you,
Next
Director
we
Abbott. Are
have-
there any other questions?
We have Director Thier.
I just had a comment. I wanted to applaud Dennis and Ron and staff for coordinating with the different transit agencies and actually getting agreement between so many agencies on the 6 priorities. I think the future of transportation is coordination, providing a seamless way for commuters and transit dependent individuals to be able to switch from agency to agency in their commute. So I really just wanted to take a moment to applaud staff and say thank you for this work. I consider it very important work.
Thank you, Director Thier. Do we have any other questions? And that concludes discussion on this item. Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on item 5?
Yes, we do have Mr. Pilpel who would like to speak on this item. So David, are you there?
I am. You can hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Great. It would be good to have more specific examples of agency and customer benefits from these activities in the future, like joint purchasing and fares. Ron talked about a little of that, but everybody purchases buses, everybody purchases diesel fuel, everybody's got some kind of a fare structure. So there are specific examples that I think should be pointed out more. Other meaningful items like hiring and safety standards, signage, and real-time information platforms. For example, when I'm going from San Francisco to Marin or Sonoma, I use the Next Muni app to find out how quickly or slowly Muni's getting me to the bridge. And then that's on one system. And then to figure out when the 101 or the 150 is coming at the toll plaza, I have to use an entirely different system to get the stop number and then find out the real-time information for Golden Gate. So that's not at all integrated. I think what I'm trying to say is it would be great to use fewer theoretical concepts and more practical examples going forward. There are a lot of specific practical examples, and this is good work. Separately, perhaps related, it was reported this week at one of the advisory committee meetings that the short-range transit plan will be here next month at this committee, and I asked that a public draft be posted a little earlier than normal so that the public might have more of a chance to weigh into that rather than just the week or 6 days, 5 days that one usually has to review board items. That's all on regional coordination for the moment. Thanks for listening.
Mr. Vice Chair, is it okay if I respond to the public comment?
Sure.
Thanks for indulging me. David brings up a good point. We don't do a good enough job of telling our story. The last 67 buses this district purchased was not an RFP that we put out. County Connection and Contra Costa County did a joint procurement that covered over a dozen transit agencies in the Bay Area. With respect to transfers, the region is looking at doing something that we currently do in the North Bay. If you get off Golden Gate Transit Bus or SMART in Sonoma County and hop on one of the 3 local bus operators, if you use Clipper, the transfer is such that the fare is free. The transfer amount is set to match the local fare in Sonoma County. Then when you go the other way, getting off, you get on a local bus, you pay your local fare. When you get on SMART or you get on Golden Gate Transit, your regional fare is reduced by the amount of the local trip. And no money changes hands. We each figure we get one going one way or the other way. So a lot of things that are being studied are currently in place. And finally, on transit information, we provide our information, as does most transit agencies, in open source format called GTFS. It's available to anybody and everyone. And there are websites that show all transit operators, whether you use Google Transit or the Transit app, and there's a couple others that access this open source data that shows the location of our buses. And different people use different ones. So you don't need to use the stop ID numbers and the Muni's Next Bus system if you don't want to. You can just use Google Transit, which most people have on their phones as part of the Google Maps system, or you can use the Transit app. And our data is open source, as is most of the transit agencies, and other folks have also developed apps. Those are just 2 that come to the top of my mind. So I think we need to do a better job of talking about what we're already doing to stimulate ideas of more aspirational things we can do to build upon the current efforts. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to say a few words in response to David. And David, thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public?
We have no other speakers.
Okay, that concludes discussion on this item. Madam Secretary, is there, let's see, I'm sorry. This is an informational presentation. Madam Secretary, please continue with the agenda.
Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item number 6, and that's a monthly report on bridge traffic, transit ridership trends, and transit service performance. And that staff report begins on page 33, and Dennis is presenting that report. Dennis, go ahead.
Thanks. The written report is before you, so I won't belabor it. At a high level, travel in the Golden Gate Corridor still remains down, primarily commute travel. So if you look at bridge traffic, you see overall bridge traffic last month compared to the same month pre-pandemic was down 19%. But during the morning commute, bridge traffic is down 30%. So people may be traveling on weekends or midday, but they're not commuting into downtown San Francisco. And the bus ridership is shown to be down about 55%. What's interesting, what's not reflected in the data, is regional bus trips, 101s, 130s, 150s, 580s, that operate 23 hours a day, that serve primarily folks that don't have access to cars. That ridership is only down about 20%. It's 80% back. While commute bus ridership, similar to bridge traffic, is way down. It's down about 80%. And ferry is similar. It's down about 50%, and that's primarily commute travel that's down. But with that, we'll continue to present information each month. We continue to participate and help in the reopening of downtown San Francisco, because ultimately we are joined at the hip with San Francisco, and as downtown rebounds and flourishes, so will our regional travel, which would be good news for our bridge, bus, and ferry budgets, as well as our divisions. And I'm available to answer any questions you may have on the data in the report.
Dennis, thank you for your report. Are there any other questions or comments from directors on item 6?
Yes, Director Maston, I have a question. So it's interesting to note that passengers per trip on page 36 is about 21, which is similar to the 2019 number of 23, but the fare box recovery is almost half. So is that due to administrative costs not having changed as much as the number of trips, or something else?
It's 2 things. One of the things is the average fare is less. There's fewer people driving across the bridge, but we're carrying a lot more local trips. So the fares that we are collecting, a lot of them are in San Francisco, that people get on a bus at Fillmore and Lombard and commute to the financial district. With the red lanes on Lombard, or not the HOV lanes on Lombard and some of the other lanes, we're the fastest trip around. And so we're carrying a lot of local trips. So the numbers are a little deceptive. We have not put back the lion's share of our commute service because we don't want to run empty buses. But the numbers at 21 is a lot of local trips. About half of all of our trips are local right now. And obviously the local fare, regardless of what county you're in, is a lot less than riding a bus from Santa Rosa to San Francisco.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Are there any other questions? Okay, with that, no action is required on this informational presentation. Madam Secretary, please go on with the agenda.
Thank you. We have no speakers on this item as well, so I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, thank you.
Item 7 is a monthly report on activities related to Marin Transit. And Dennis, do you have anything else to add related to this item?
No, just that all is good with Marin Transit.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, that concludes discussion on this item. Madam Secretary, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on item 7?
We have no other speakers on item number 7, and we do not have speakers under item 8, which is public comment.
Okay, thank you. We have reached the end of the agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So
Don't
moved.
be shy. Okay, it's moved and seconded. Hearing no objections, this concludes the meeting of the Transportation Committee. Thank you, colleagues. The time is, just a second here, 9:42. See you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Bert.